Hello. Hi, everybody. Oh, you don't have to move. Yeah. So we are going to go ahead and get started right now. If you guys want to move over here, you don't have to, but I feel like we're so far away from you. So if you have any desire to move over here, please do. My name is Annie Morley, and I'm going to be leading our panel today on XR and education. I'm personally super interested in this space. It's always been, the application of XR in education has always been super interesting to me. I have 2 kids, for context. I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and see a lot of really cool things that I'm sure they're going to be using it in ways that, we can't even imagine right now. So to get us started, I do just want to make sure that we all are speaking the same language. I'm using the term XR to encompass augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality. So just so we're all on the same page when I use that, or when these guys use it, but you can clarify. I'd like us to, actually, how many people in here have experience with augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality? Is that pretty much everybody? Okay. Awesome. I'd like us to start off by having our panelists introduce themselves, and then can you please tell us a little bit about your experience in the XR and education world? And then I'd also like you to tell us what your favorite game or experience is. I know I didn't tell you guys this beforehand, sorry. They look shocked. So tell us a little bit about your experience in this space, and then tell us what your favorite experience or game is in this space.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Julez. I have plenty of, I would say, an education background in this space of immersive education platforms. So I taught at the University of Idaho while I was getting my master's degree, where we explored student learners creating experiences as the projects for the class. So do you have a message you'd like to convey? Do you have a lesson you'd like to convey to us as a class? So it's really a good example of XR education in practice, where the experiences themselves are the stories that the students are telling. They are the lessons that the students can be conveying, whether it be in biological sciences or history. So that led me to consult with the LA School District, where we were looking at integrating some of these WebXR platforms into their curriculum. Ongoing conversations, of course, but it's been a really exciting space. There's innovations happening every day on multiple platforms. We have one of the owners of one of those platforms here today as well, so it's very exciting to be here. Oh, and then my favorite game is Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and I represent that in full fashion, I hope. So.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Karen Doty. I teach for the Games, Interactive Media, and Mobile program here at Boise State, so GIM for short. Been here about 7 years, originally from Iowa. I got into gaming and XR. Well, I got into gaming as a kid. One of my favorite games, computer games. I loved all the King's Quests games, all the Sierra games that they had back then. Now in VR, I actually spent a lot of time in nature VR. Anyone played that game? It's just a simulation, but it's very, very kind of calming. So it's for me, it's a little bit more therapeutic to be in VR that way. But I started off as a graphic designer, actually, and was designing apps and things like that, and that molded into games and animations, and then that now became more extended reality. So it's been an evolution of print to digital to super hyperrealism digital and so on from there. I got my master's and a PhD at Iowa State, so I started off teaching gaming there. They didn't have a gaming degree, and then Boise State started one, so that's what brought me here. I also work with the NASA Suits program, if you guys have heard of that. That is basically it's a student program where they are building extended reality experience to be tested for the NASA astronauts. So that's been my extended reality experience as well. I'm happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Markus Nigrin. I'm the CEO of STEM Forged. And we merged with a company called Blocksmith, which I founded back then, so now I'm a co-founder. And we bring game-based learning solutions to schools. Right now, the majority of our offering is around the esports and game design programs. So if a school wants to start an esports program or a game design program, but they don't really know how, then we provide instructor services for them, we provide curriculum for them. And for the game design solutions, we have our own in-house solution. Think of it as a Unity Lite that is very heavily geared towards XR output. In fact, as I just told Annie, we are now officially recognized. If you go out and ask ChatGPT about XR creation platforms, my startup is being mentioned. So I'm super happy right now. So yeah, they found us. So that's pretty cool. Our target demography is forced to work on Chromebooks mainly. So we have a path for creating 3D content on Chromebooks that then runs on VR and AR devices. And by the way, just for the record, my favorite definition of XR, instead of saying it is everything, it's using the letter V from VR and underneath adding the letter A from AR, and that makes an X. And I always wanted to make an animation out of this, but I don't have the skills.
I can do that for you.
Nice. We'll talk.
There we go.
Okay.
What's your favorite experience or game?
I'm
You
Stardew
can't
Valley,
say
clearly.
Blocksmith either. You can't
I
say
will
Star-
not say Blocksmith. Have you seen the stuff that is on our platform? It's not good. We have about 85,000 experiences made by students and our own team on the platform. And the important thing is not that it's like amazing, great content, but it's very, very meaningful to the one who made it. So that's just where I want to go there. Personally, I like Stardew Valley. I liked it before chill games were a thing. This GDC, chill games, I'm telling you. And in VR, I would probably say a little demo called Blarp is still something I love to play because it makes such a beautiful sense of the space around you. Beat Saber just to go mainstream.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. And I would like to invite the audience, if you have any questions while we're talking, please feel free to raise your hand and ask follow-up questions, and I can get the mic to you, or I'll repeat your question. I'd like to start out just by talking about the opportunities in this space and thinking about, I'd like your opinions and your thoughts on where are the biggest like short-term opportunities for XR technology in education right now.
So I would answer this with a two-part question, and that is the tools that are being used either by educators, by learners, or just anyone who wants to add creativity to the gaming space. That is the access to internet, and I would say the glue that holds all of the XR umbrella together is the interconnectivity of these web tools. How accessible can we make them? Which was my second point, which is the barrier to entry to start making experiences. Coding is, of course, a very specialized skill and a very important skill to game design, but no-code systems, visual code systems, these are tools that are somewhat required to create that barrier, or to remove that barrier of entry to creating experiences. So drag and drop opportunities for just putting a scene together really quickly and then experiencing that in real time. So yeah, the opportunities themselves are defined by the accessibility of the tools that we're talking about.
Do you want to add? Yeah.
I'd like to mirror that. So some of the things that we teach, we teach a lot of Unity and Unreal, which are engines that a lot of people can have, everyone has access to, and there's a lot of documentation out there on those things. So just getting started on places like that can help, but then learning, why you're building those applications is super important. It's like anyone can build an application, but whether or not it's going to work for the purpose is still something yet to find. And so I think people need to just get out there and try and see what is working, and then from there they'll find something that they really like to work with.
Anything to add?
Yeah, not much. There's unfortunately not a big cluster or offering for free games and free educational games on XR platforms. I would say right now most of the customers that we are seeing, most of the schools that are doing anything in that space, it's just to provide something very cool and very engaging to the students. That in itself is such a huge problem in schools right now, because there is just, if you look at engagement levels from the students and attendance levels from the students, it's just really low. So having cool after school programs, summer programs, and all those things, that's where schools right now are spending money on. And that usually pays off for them, because suddenly it's a good place for kids to go back and re-engage with.
Awesome. You started to touch a little bit on this, but I think I want to ask about kind of the challenges, or I feel like, even years ago, there was a lot of buzz around how much this technology could benefit the education space. But yet sometimes it feels like there hasn't been an adoption that we'd like to see if you are into this technology and you understand the value of it. Can you talk a little bit about maybe why you feel like we haven't seen the adoption levels we were hoping for?
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak from experience, just from bringing these potential offerings to the administrators of different institutions. Sometimes we can show something, it's like, oh, this is a learning environment, this is how maybe it's like a live Zoom call where we're actually getting these administrators in these rooms, in these XR platforms, like, here's a virtual classroom, here's what it feels like. But the next question is like, okay, what are steps to integrate it into our educational platform we already use? So maybe it's Microsoft Teams, maybe it's Google Classrooms, Blackboard, Canvas. So my answer to that usually is, does your platform, the educational platform, does it allow embedded code? Because we're talking XR, we're talking a web-enabled experience, 3D environment, or any other environment. Those are, because they're in the browser, they can be turned into embedded code, and those embedded code can be put into Canvas pages. So really, the challenge is communicating and educating the decision makers into that process, which rightfully so. They have student privacy to look after. They've got educators to look after in terms of how much they already have on their plate. As an educator myself, I've learned that building a new curriculum isn't as easy as just putting it together in a week. It really takes a lot of thought and process into building the research behind your curriculum and making it effective. So if there is a WebXR tool being integrated into an institution, that process, of course, does need a little bit of handholding, but of course it could be a lot easier just by outlining the possibilities, I suppose. I hope that answers that a little bit.
From my experience, so with teaching college students, they have access to the engines that they need. They have access to people that can help them with the code, access to people that can help them with animations and the art. But what's hard is defining what actually is going to work in an XR experience. So for example, 9 years ago, I did a study with the HoloLens, and I had 75 to 80 people just put on the HoloLens. They'd never been in the HoloLens before, or in an XR environment, actually. And what I did is I placed a hologram in their space and asked them to interact with it. And it was all over the board. Some people would try to go over and pick up the hologram. Others would tap and slide. Some would, gesture swipe or pinch. And what I was discovering is people didn't know how to use these XR environments yet, because it's new to them. It's only been around for not even 10 years at this point. And so even today, we're still trying to figure out what is the universal way to interact with these three-dimensional spaces. So that has been a challenge, is trying to figure that out. I think it's getting better. I'd love to do the same test today and maybe again in 9 years and see how are people intuitively actually starting to interact, because it is becoming more adaptable. People are understanding. But I do think today it's still undefined. We're not quite sure what we're doing in these spaces and what is working long term. And so that's been something I have to work with.
Yeah, I would say the short answer is that we all lied to all of you for 10 years, 8 years, 10 years, 8 years. On these panels, we're like, VR is around the corner. And it has massive memory retention properties, right? And we came from personal experience. And all of you have been in VR. So who can vividly remember being in VR? I would say pretty much everybody, right? Like you can think back to it and go, oh yeah, that's how it looked like, right? We were like kind of innocent and we were like, okay, that's great for memory retention. Then the studies came out. Boise State did a nurse training thing. And oh my God, it saves so much money and it is amazing. Then remember the burn victims that were in VR and had a measurable pain, like an effect of VR on their body similar to morphine. And that was a measurable result as well. And we're like, the studies are around the corner for memory retention. And then all the schools will force the innocent kids in VR because learning is so great and amazing. And they will remember everything. And those studies really never happened. And also on a large level, VR didn't break through. It's still a niche thing at this stage. There's a lot of remarkable developments. And especially last year, Apple kicked it in high gear with the Vision Pro, and Meta immediately was like, we have that too, and it costs much less. But that war is now, ramping up, if you want, and that's a completely new aspect in the whole XR world. But so far, to be honest, it's quite niche.
I just think of the Magic Leap video with the whale. Does everybody remember that? The whale that was basically like jumping out of the floor, and it showed this room wasn't it kids in the stands in a gymnasium. Anyways, I'm still waiting for that. I'd really like to see that. I would like to move a little bit into you were talking about, or I'd like to dig in a little bit more about something you touched on with school districts, getting them involved, and the potential cost implications too for adopting this type of technology for schools or educational institutions. And, how do you mitigate the cost as well as, bring them along to see how this can be integrated into their systems, or what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so in regards to, say, like FrameVR.io, the web XR platform, and Microsoft Mesh, those are two that have come up in the past where they're already integrated into, like, say, a Microsoft Teams educational platform, but sorry. Lost my train of thought here. Could you repeat the question?
Oh yeah, just how did I put that? Because it wasn't exactly what I had written down. Basically, the cost implications for schools and how they integrate this technology and bringing them along.
So, to my understanding, it's a mirrored approach to workplace training. So the hours that are spent to onboard teachers to learn a new tool, of course, like those are allocations that need to be made. As for using the tools themselves, there are typically subscription costs to enterprise solutions. So it would be like $100 a month, depending on the tool. So of course, there's a subscription service to get like the pro premium versions of these tools to utilize all of the features that you would need for a teacher, like moderation, live, video calling type stuff. Usually those are free off the bat, but just as an example, there's usually like a monthly cost, but the onboarding cost I think is the biggest thing, which again is just mirrored by workplace PD, professional development.
What have you encountered? Do you guys want to?
I haven't worked a whole lot with K-12 and the costs in that sense. I mean, with college, with universities, there's always a cost with having basically being able to pay for all the labs that we have and being able to have the technology up to date. That is continued costs that we do run into. So like with the Apple Vision Pro, it's a very expensive device. It looks wonderful. I've been in it once, but we don't have the cost efficiency to have 30 of those. But we can have a number of Quest 3s, which is still expensive, but not as much. A lot of the things that we've worked on for more K-12, or at least for consumer use, is we've built applications that can be loaded onto those headsets and stay there. And that's been nice. We don't have to go through necessarily, the Apple developer store or anything like that to develop an app. You can just load it onto that device and they can use it. And so that's been something where our students have built applications that they can then give to educators to use. And then those people can use them to teach other students and continue that on and on.
Yeah, I just want to add that you know how much I do not like Mark Zuckerberg, right? Like just personally for what he is done and keeps doing. But Meta has the only play in schools right now. As much as Apple wants to, the Meta Quest 3 is the only viable device to deploy in bigger numbers in schools. It's just what it is. There's pretty much no competition right now. And the Meta is exceptionally bad for school environments in terms of managing apps and keeping everything updated and whatnot. There is a company actually in Bend, Oregon called VEDX. They're specializing in providing devices to schools plus managing solutions. They use ManageXR to keep the devices updated and all those things. We had a teacher in Blaine County, the richest school district in the state, take their VR devices home one by one just to update them every week because the Wi-Fi at the school was so bad that the Quest was not able to keep up. So that's pretty much telling you everything you need to know about VR devices in schools. But there are solutions out there like VEDX. There are system providers that are, helping teachers and school districts, making them not dust collectors. And that's, I think, the second biggest thing that we're seeing out there. They buy VR device, it's going well for a year, and then they're done.
It's obsolete.
That's not great.
If I could just add, that made me think of a couple things where, clearly there's a need for infrastructure, right? Internet access, if it is for the need for updating. But I would even propose like interactive media, curriculum specialists or something like that, where, these are plays that can be made for schools to onboard these people to ensure that, this is someone who's staffed, that is willing to see the success of, the entire staff, the educational staff, almost like technology services, extra member to that team. But I don't know. I just feel like there's really a need for that specialized solution. But on top of that, like someone to coordinate that infrastructure to ensure like everything's laid out and being used, right? Like creating design programs to make sure they're not collecting dust. So like, yeah, there's a lot of opportunities. So,
I'd also like to add for that person, if there's a way to continue to make sure that the applications we're using are including everyone. That's something we work with a lot of our students, is making sure that they are accessible to someone who's hearing, who cannot hear as well, or someone who has some sort of, visual impairment's a little bit different, but there are times where you can still work with that. And that's a challenge. Very big challenge in XR and VR is to include everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm adding something else to that. So we are naturally, as a provider of such a solution, we are naturally in position to talk with those people. And 100,000% you're right. This is the person that you want in your school district. Guess where we see the highest turnover ever the last 2 years? It's crazy. Like almost every one of our clients works at a different school now versus 2 years ago, or somewhere completely different. Or because they were so nimble, climbed up the ladder in the school district that they're not teaching anymore, and what a loss for the district. The teacher shortage is real. The stress on teachers is insane right now. And asking something like, hey, make VR happen, it's a tall order.
Can I ask just really quickly, you said that Meta is best positioned in the for school systems. Do you mean specifically from like a price point? Yeah. Okay.
And features. They are the only viable pass-through technology device. The HTC claims they have that. Let's be a bit careful with this. Apple is going a very specific way, but it's completely unaffordable for schools. So yeah, I would say right now it's still the Quest 3 that is very viable. And they are taking a very different path than what we all think of in XR right now, which is a very work-heavy device. It's a workhorse device. The Apple Vision Pro, they don't even think about much about gaming or experiences, or whales for that matter. I hate them for that. I want the whale too. But it's a work device. Hey, you don't need to buy a computer screen anymore. You can have 3 floating around you in the airport while you're traveling. That's good.
So I want to move on to talk about the students themselves and get your thoughts on, can you tell me how you perceive the use of XR technology for children, considering factors like age appropriateness and parental concerns? I just would love to hear what you think. Yeah.
I think I'll need to chew on this. Maybe you guys want to go first.
It's a difficult question because so right now the XR devices aren't for children under 12. And whether in 10 years that might be very different, or in 5 years it might be very different. So like I have a 4-year-old who has not been in XR, but I'm certain she would be excited about it. And perhaps I'm thinking, this is a bit of a generalist statement, but I feel like the youngest generation, which is Gen Alpha now, and then the generation after that was Gen Z, do learn the best by seeing what they're learning. And so I think there is a huge opportunity there to teach people that are used to being able to look up what something looks like, be able to experience this by just looking at Googling and chat GPTing anything to figure out what it is, to teach them. But I don't know the answer to how device-wise to show them. That I don't know if that's there yet.
I feel like one parallel here is that, I think you give me a good point here to expand on, which is, the younger generations are more accustomed to smartphones and tablets, learning, pre-education through YouTube video, sessions of, the ABCs and all the, great videos out there for kids. Now, the applications themselves on things like the iPad, you've got Scratch, that is a really good entry point for kids to learn coding. Of course, other web tools like Roblox already have a dedicated player base that it is a creator platform, same with Fortnite. So kids are already learning game design, they're already learning experience design. It's really just a matter of transitioning those same principles into maybe higher level engines like standalone Unreal or Unity. And of course, working with the SDKs to build out on a Quest, which I think is a really good pipeline. So to say I feel like for kids, the opportunity is really like, they're already there doing these types of things. It's really just a matter of how quickly can the more older generations lay the path as clearly and as effectively as possible, inspiring them to say that, you're already creative, keep doing that, I just think more kids need to hear that.
I have a Quest 3 at home. I bought it 6 months ago. It's still in the package. I have never unwrapped it. I've never tried it. To me, VR is highly uncomfortable, and it took me way too long to admit it, because we all thought, like, if you just get used to it, it will go away. It does not. It's a severe eye strain. You telling me you go in VR for an hour and you don't feel like completely whacked afterwards? I don't know. That seems to be still the normal behavior. I'm really having high hopes on, the path-through modes, and I had the Magic Leap on back then, and I didn't see a whale, but I also didn't feel like any eye strain or anything like that. It was a comfortable device. Same with the HoloLens, by the way. At one point, I was working on my computer. I had the HoloLens on without realizing it for 2 hours. It was just comfortable. And so that's, I think, a huge component of why VR did not break through as much as you thought. Those who tried it said, occasional games, but it's really heavy. I wouldn't do that to kids under 13 still. This is not a thing. We have schools who do this. We know they do in elementary school. I mean, we're not ratting on them, and I don't think anybody cares, but I don't think I would recommend doing this much longer. There was an actual concern about vision impairment from VR, like as in you can medically destroy your eyes to a degree by doing too much VR. I don't know if that has ever manifested, but back then there were some not so nice reports about the whole thing. So I would just limit it. But AR devices or those new, do we have a word for this? Nobody likes MR. The Apple thing.
Vision Pro.
Let's just call it that, the Vision Pro. Those who have that pass-through AR-ish mode, they are worth re-exploring by this, because supposedly the theory is, and the practice seems to be, you can wear them for a long time without having a problem. And I think that would open it for kids.
Yeah, I would say, so I've had the Apple Vision Pro on for about an hour, and it was pretty comfortable. And I do think we are moving towards the right path, but right now it is obviously still way above the price point. But there is possibility there, and I do think there is. Yeah.
You mentioned the age 13, and I think that's the age that Meta has, that you cannot technically be marketing to individuals under the age of 13. So there is this age that's out there that it's not meant for 13-year-olds, but there aren't exactly explicit guidelines, truly. And younger kids are absolutely using this technology. I know kids that have gotten Quest 2s for Christmas, over the last couple of years that are 10 and under. So it's just kind of interesting because while they're saying that it is not for people under a certain age, it's absolutely being used, I think, probably at a higher rate than we realize, from what I've anecdotally seen in grade schools and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, part of like the idea of XR is that, say you have this experience, right? It can be accessed from a mobile device, from a VR device, from a computer, same experience. You could have someone in VR also interacting with someone who's using their laptop and phone. So to say that this virtual environment has these different pivot points for interaction is like kind of a good thing. But yeah, if like the main purpose or the only outlet for engagement is VR, then I think, there's probably going to be a limited user base there. But I do agree, plenty of, younger kids are already using VR, for games like Among Us. Roblox has a VR component now, so it's definitely growing. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's the ideal situation, right? Have an application that anyone in the room can look at. We've done it with a few things with NASA suits where we had an application where someone could be in VR, someone could be in XR, someone was using their smartphone, someone's using the tablet, all looking at the same thing at the same time. That was fantastic. Kids were able to be a part of it. Adults could see what they were seeing and also see avatars. That's not for every game at the moment, but ideally that would be a wonderful application for everything.
I want to talk about like a state like Idaho. How do you think XR technology can enhance the learning experience in a state like ours where we have large rural populations? There's access challenges that you even touched on. What do you think?
Yeah, so I actually have like a sample environment, and if anyone wants to try it, just let me know. I can like show you the QR code and access it. But I made this test classroom of just like an informational room where you've got documentation, videos, and models of like the watershed system in Idaho, how we can highlight the fish, the different types of fish, their migration patterns. We can really just create a whole lesson model just around one specific use case within Idaho about the ecological impacts of, what takes place. The only limit to that is internet access. And I actually often say that with the metaverse, and this is kind of my radical opinion about it, is that really we're not going to reach any metaverse until everyone has public access to internet. So maybe that's municipal networks that are taken out through taxes. You've got your internet tax on your yearly incomes and stuff. So and there's areas in the United States that have established municipal internet, which again, I'm just saying that as the starting point, because if we already know these web tools are, available to create classrooms out of, really the only barrier is that access. So, anyways, I don't know. It's kind of all over the place answer, but it's ending that thought there. But I think there is still plenty of ways that that it can be used in those Idaho, nature reserve contexts. But
I mean, my experience with the rural communities have been actually going out and showing this technology, being able to show students at that age that this exists. You can make a career out of it. We've had a number of students from rural communities come to Boise State to do this program and to hopefully, make a whole career out of that. And they didn't know that. I mean, I remember talking to a number of their parents are like, my son or daughter loves video games. They want to be a video game developer. And then they kind of give that. And I'm like, actually, there's a lot of opportunities for someone with those skill sets. If you have coding, art, user experience, these tons of types of jobs can come from having that experience and that know-how. So I've been working with students more that way on showing that the internet is still definitely a problem. Even when I go to demo things, I have to use my own hotspot, and that's it depends on where you are in the mountains if that's even going to work at all. But if I could show them that this stuff exists, get them excited, there's still at least a spark there for them to keep looking at it and keep trying to find more ways to use it.
So we saw a couple of initiatives. STEM Action Center did some stuff. The Idaho Commission for Libraries actually did some stuff there. Without that teacher in the school that is facilitating and making this happen, none of this actually works. And the Idaho State is doing a pretty horrible job with teachers. So let's just be very honest about this.
You touched on it. I just wanted to second that. You're right. I forget what the Idaho Commission of Libraries having that, an entire budget allocated towards the distribution of VR headsets across, any public library in the state, which has been, of course, a slow-moving process. But those VR headsets go into the maker spaces of those libraries, which are those creative spaces that allow kids to just come in, get exposed, just kind of see what's available, get inspired, maybe lead to other things like, 3D modeling or game design. So, those access points, I think, become those initial first steps.
Do you guys remember when that was? What year that was?
Last year.
It was last year that they had another one. There was. I guess I'm thinking of some that were back in even I think 2018.
Yes.
Didn't they do it in 2019?
Yeah.
Okay, but also last year. Let's talk about the future and what that can look like. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what trends or developments do you see in the future where how can this evolve, or where do you think it's evolving to?
Yeah, so I just feel like the power of the web browser and the QR code is just phenomenal. I mean, it's in a way more primitive interactive media, but reliable. So as long as environments can be made and embedded and produced through the internet, then I see a lot of power there and a lot of growth. Just along the lines of things like Spline Tool, that's one that's really been innovating in that space. I think Spatial and Frame have been kind of at war for a while for kind of capitalizing on that. So Microsoft Mesh is now there, but you need a Unity SDK and you need to upload to their publishing platform, and you need an enterprise license first. So I think they all need to be more open source, and the more open source we can be, we can look at tools like Blender, how they've just created entire industries based on their level of accessibility to their tools. So in the future, whoever is the most open source is going to have the most growth.
For heads-up display XR, I think that we're going to continue to see a lot of growth in simulations. So similar to the nursing experience that we have, where we can have people simulate what they're learning, and especially in college, where you can physically practice what you're supposed to do in that VR XR headset. I think there is value to that, being able to actually physically move, see what you're doing, have some visual, measurement of what you're doing at that time. I think we're going to continue to see that growth. Same thing goes with showing certain topics in XR, or maybe it's science, or perhaps it's history. Being able to actually sit and experience that is going to leave a lasting impact. Something that maybe we aren't going to need to update every year because we know that this exists. This is what it is. So that way we can continue to use those things over and over again. I see a lot of growth in that. I do think there is still hope for consumer XR. I just think the price point's not quite there, but I see it growing in the future. Smartphones were not as cheap as they were today, or at least not as accessible to everybody, and maybe there's still hope for that. But for heads-up display XR, it's definitely simulations for me.
So can we talk about AI now? I threatened you to do this. No, okay, but it's related actually. So. Two things. First of all, everybody's looking at the Vision Pro right now, and the preliminary data that I'm seeing is not looking great. They're looking at the Vision Pro to see if Apple is now again paving the path for a completely new future that others should follow suit or they are dead. it doesn't look like it right now. It's remarkably okay selling, but it's not crazy selling as it looks like. So will we see much competition in that space? Will we see a big push for workplace emulating VR? I don't know. Doesn't look great near term. Long term, success of XR will be dominated by content availability. And that's where AI kicks in really, really hard. If we are generally, at STEMforged, we're assuming that the cost of content production will go to zero. That's super bad news for anybody who works in content production right now. But it will happen. And it will happen in the 3D space. I have prompt to 3D model on my computer. It works. Not that we would have developed this, or I would have essentially bought the Boise Center or something like that. But there are credible solutions out there that are doing prompt to 3D model, prompt to 3D scene, prompt to interactive 3D scene. AI is pretty good with coding. Not great, but pretty okay with coding. We will see interactive scenes. I need a nurse training, prompt to VR experience in a not too far away future. They are all working on this with such an insane amount of money, as well as smart people, I guess. This will come, this will happen. So I would suggest everybody think about what if that content is available at your fingertips at a good prompt, and then you have it, and you can spit out a nurse training, a zookeeper training, a traffic, control training, a panelist. We'll see. But this will then this is essentially like pushes the whole thing back into a viewing device. But then you have now content for that viewing device, because VR is like the best input is 3D. So for 3D content, those devices get more attractive, and I think that will amplify that use and hopefully even consumer XR more than before.
Great, thank you. Well, we don't have that much time left, so I wanted to ask anyone if there's any questions from the audience, or anyone has any. Yeah. Okay. Question about AI. Hold on, since you're close, I'm going to give you the.
Do you find that, like you said, like content creators might be like obsolete because you can prompt? Okay. I'm just curious, like your idea of like, how do we protect content creators in the 3D space, and like maybe making about education. Like, do you find maybe kids are going to be a little bit discouraged because it's like, well, AI is just going to be able to design now, so like there's no point, So
I don't really have a great answer. I have kids as well, and I'm scared with all I'm seeing. They are not going obsolete. First of all, there will be a need for natural evolving content coming from a human side, and the AI model owners need that content to keep evolving their systems. But what we are anticipating is a race to the bottom for content creation itself. At the same time, the need for content review will go up dramatically, and we're talking human review now. Someone who puts the seal of approval that AI was not hallucinating, not lying, and all those things. That is an outspoken thing for a long time, but it is also at the same time getting better. So there you have another race that's going on. But we generally assume that content creation cost will go down, review cost will go up. And you've all probably experienced this. You have like a nice colleague who has sent you like a 3-page document that took them 30 seconds to make in ChatGPT and will take you 5 minutes to read it. And you're really tempted to just feed it back in ChatGPT and make it summarize it for you. That's where we are right now. And so there will be a flood stream of content. And someone needs to decide what is good and what is bad. And I think that's where we still have a little existence. But I'm not like super happy and thrilled about this for the kids.
I think there's still room for storytelling in a lot of these environments that AI is not perfect at in any way. And that is where we need humans to still put in those stories. I mean, AI can only tell us so much, but if you're doing a 3D animation, for example, AI is not going to be perfect at that. So there's still a huge need for people to tell those stories where AI is not there.
Part of, so within my educational upbringing, I started with an area of expertise in 3D modeling, but I was kind of one of those students that like really tried to embody the idea of a producer. And I think that although potentially uncomfortable for some, part of those pivot points can really happen nowadays with, sure, some of the AI tools that are out there, 3D modelers becoming producers, animators becoming producers, experienced designers, and even coders. If they already have access to, the many facets of developing a game. We mentioned at the beginning of this panel talk, right? There's different jobs to fulfill in making a game. Well, what happens when it's only one person making that game because they have access to all the content that needs to be made into the game? So really just maybe it's a matter of empowering producers from those same communities that are originally 3D content creators. I don't know. I mean, it's not an answer I think any of us have that answer for, but I think the other side of it too is in a world where any AI content, 2D, 3D, motion, let's say it's completely photorealistically accurate to the human design, I still question what the value of the content will be, because maybe there's disclaimers, maybe there's a little sticker that says human or non-human made. I still think the value of human-made content, whether the quality is the same between AI or not, may become still more valuable than non-human made. And I don't know, maybe that doesn't matter with certain industries where utility is all that matters, like training solutions. But in the marketplace of creativity, like ArtStation, I mean, AI is not welcome, and that's only because they're very human creator focused. So it's important discussion. So maybe next year we'll have a panel about something like that.
Yeah.
Anybody else? We have just a couple more minutes. If not, yeah, go ahead. So to repeat the question, just protecting creators from AI versus actual creator content, and expanding on that.
Kind of like being able to work with the tools, but also not having other people use the tool.
Okay, yeah, can you?
I think there's possibility to use it as a tool. So like you're saying, color in all the lines. That way I don't have to do this, right? Especially if you're doing a 2D animation. In my experience, I've had students have to tell me what they did and show you guys know this, you're my students, in an artist statement that says this is what I'm doing, so that way I can actually say. I don't have an example of a way to protect your work yet, but I do think knowing that is there as a tool is important, but not expecting it to be the thing that you hand in as a final project. Yeah,
I have a tidbit for you that I like to share. There is a company out there, undetectable.ai. I don't know if anybody has heard about this, but you can feed it ChatGPT generated text and it will scramble it in a way that an AI detector will not red light it anymore. So it will humanize it. And it's a Boise startup. It's the biggest company out there that is actually making all those tools worthless right now. And we should have him on the panel.
Yeah, we should use that.
I was instructing at the University of Idaho, as an instructor, when the whole ChatGPT thing kind of took off. And yeah, I'll say academic dishonesty, the idea of that guideline totally got fudged. I mean, there was no way to tell at the time because, it was completely new, and there was plenty of discussions happening about how do we control this, what do we need to do about it. So I think it was kind of a fumble that school year because of how, and this is just speaking from like, from what we're hearing, right, and what we could understand of the idea of academic dishonesty is like, okay, well, how much research or input is human involvement versus assisted? And it just totally redefined the entire policy. And I'm really curious to know any other institution, like what those current guidelines might look like, because maybe they need to be reworked. I don't know. Or maybe they already are.
I have one. Sorry.
No, I think they definitely need to be revisited at times. So, like, as a professor, we look to have students demo things, so we know that they're working. They're demoing what they're doing. That they have to explain the code to a point, or they have to show the steps that they did to create a content, and that helps. It's not a foolproof situation because that does add a lot more extra time on both ends, but it's something. Yeah.
Just really one sentence. I would not focus too much on protection right now. I would actively look at the space and find out where human content is being valued. Not artificially like what ArtStation is doing, shut out, but where it's actually being valued. And I'm sure we'll see a bunch of niches in that space. And hopefully big ones.
All right. Thank you, guys. That's our time. Can we give our panelists a round of applause? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us.